Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Raven here with some more Arma 3. This is part 3 of the Alive tutorial, and this one we're going to be working on setting up the military objective and whatnot, and the military AI commander, and so on and so forth. Up until this point, you haven't needed to sync anything to anything. And like I said in the first part, if you're using the, where is it at? Military ID threat. There we go. If you're using this module, you don't need to sync this to any of this either. Um, but for this example, we're not going to touch that. But I'll do a brief rundown towards the end of this video of how that one works. So to get started with the main thing that you need to do is open the Alive Wiki, which is over here, and then select the factions known to work with Alive. I already have this tab open. So basically, under this page, you have all of the known factions to work with Alive. For this example, we'll use the Russian RHS faction MSV. So I'm just going to copy and paste that really quick, or copy it. But under here, you have a plethora of units that you can find on Armaholic, the Steam Workshop, so on and so forth, that are known to work with Alive. So it's your prerogative on what you want to use, but for this example, we're going to be using the RHS MSV. Also, while I'm over here, the supported maps page, if you click on the GitHub, it has more. Let's go over there. There we go. It has more maps that aren't on this page right here. But all of these maps here, and then all the ones that have check marks next to them on the GitHub are known to work with Alive. And then the ability, you have the ability to request maps as well. But as you can see, this GitHub was last edited on May 15th of 2016, but there's people that request stuff weekly or daily, pretty much. Cherno Redux, Cherno 2035, question mark, and Namalsk. But let's jump right back into it. So the first thing that you're going to want to do after you copied the supported faction, which blah, 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 I can't English. There we go. We copied the RHS faction MSV. What you're going to do is you're going to go over to the military AI commander, and then for override factions, you're going to hit Control V. You're just going to paste that guy in there. So as I said in the first video, you want it set to persistent because you want things to be dynamic. You want them to be an occupational style commander. Asymmetric installations aren't used, like ID factories, HQs, etc. So you select unused for this guy. Roadblocks, they're asymmetric, so if you have it on invasion or occupation, just set that to no. For reinforcements, we'll set it to seldom for the time being. Basically, what reinforcements does is it uses. Oh crap! I forgot to put the logistics down, the military logistics. But basically, what the reinforcements does, like it says, the AI commander will request reinforcements once their numbers are depleted to 90%, 75%, 50%, so on and so forth. So we'll get to that here with the military logistics in a second. The intel, like I said in the first video, you want this to be seldom or none, or if you want AI to be on literally everybody, you can set it to often, but that's your prerogative. I usually don't worry about any of these. If you're going to be overriding a faction, it always helps to select a faction to none. And then I don't usually touch the max simultaneous attacks, mainly because it gives the AI commander more to do. So from there, we're going to hit OK. We'll go over and drop this military logistics guy down. I forgot to talk about that. So basically what the military logistics is, you want it persistent. And this is the ability for reinforcements. So I usually leave it on dynamic. That way, supply convoys come in, or reinforcement convoys, or like if the faction you're using has helicopters, the helicopters will fly in and drop off troops. You can select the force pool on how many reinforcements you want. For this example, we'll just set it to 100. Um, Allow infantry, you want to allow infantry, you want to allow mechanized, motorized armor. If the faction you're using has helicopters, you can select yes, but if not, select no and allow planes. You don't want to allow planes if the faction doesn't have planes. And then for air transport assets, you want to select it to faction only. That way, if there is helicopters in that faction, only assets from that faction will be able to be spawned in, or called in to be spawned in, so to speak. Um, so, for example, if you have side and faction, it'll use like CSAT helicopters and CSAT vehicles. If you're trying to go for a like realistic modern sort of vibe, CSAT isn't really what you want flying in with a dual rotor weird looking helicopter. So for this example, we'll have it on faction only, no planes, no helicopters, armor yes, motorized yes, mechanized yes, infantry yes. The force pull will be at 100. The reinforcement type is dynamic. You want it persistent. Then hit OK. Um, so like I said in the first video, the syncing, we haven't done much of syncing yet, but with the military stuff and the civ stuff, you're going to need to be syncing things to each other. So we'll go down to military close quarter battle, and we'll set all this up really quick. So you want it persistent. The locality, you can, never mind. You used to be able to change it, but now it's set to auto. Type, you have two options. You have strategic and civilian. So with civilian, it'll spawn AI, like military AI, in the civilian locations. Or if you have it set to strategic, the military AI commander will designate strategic locations for the AI to be spawned in at. For this example, we're going to set it to civilian. For CQB locations, you can set it to strictly towns, or you can use the complete map. We'll just leave it to complete map because the TAOR that we're going to set up later and the blacklist marker is going to be a small area. So only entities that are, I worded that wrong. Only areas that you describe will be able to be spawned in, so to speak. For probability, you can set up to 2% or 50%. It's your prerogative. For this example, we'll leave it at 20%. So 20% of the time within that area, there will be AI in a designated CQB location. For density, this is for additional CQB location or placements. You can set it to very high, you can set it to medium, you can set it to low. It's all your prerogative. For this example, we'll use medium. That way you can see what it does. The AI amount, you have the ability to put an individual in a house, or a duo, a pair, or you can have a full fire team, so 4-man or 4 men in a house. That way you get that garrison vibe, so to speak. For this example, we'll leave it on pair. Static weapons, I usually don't use this. I keep this turned off. What I do with static weapons, if I want 50 cals or mortars, or what is it, like ZSUs, or anything like that, I'll place that in the editor in given locations. That way the AI can spawn in and then mount that, instead of having a vanilla Arma mortar, so to speak, or for example, spawn in a doorway, and then whenever the AI shoots, he just makes a mess of him and his buddies, even though it's funny, but it's not really feasible. So I leave static weapons on none, and then I place them myself. For placement, this implies that you have something here, so you can just leave that as default, because if you have this set to none, nothing will happen. For spawn ground, I leave this between what's it called? 700, between 700 and 1500. It all depends on, you know, how you're playing and what the map size is. But for a like general rule of thumb, if you're within, you know, a kilometer or something, I don't like entities spawning in. But for this example, we'll just leave it at 700. That way you can see uh, the entities spawning in, so to speak. Um, for static weapons, this doesn't matter if you have the static weapons turned off, so you can just leave that as default. For spawn heli, I usually leave this off. That way when helicopters, like I said, are flying across the map, they're not spawning, you know, entities all over the fucking place. Mainly because if a helicopter is flying at, you know, 200 kilometers an hour and they're 500 meters in the sky, there's no way he's going to see a dude in his living room taking a nap. Same with jets. You know, a jet's flying at 500 plus kilometers an hour. He's not going to be seeing somebody taking a nap in his basement. For factions, we're going to control V, the RHS faction that we copied and pasted from the supported factions. And then the TAORs and blacklist, we'll get to that here shortly. If you want to blacklist units, you can do that as well. I usually don't, mainly because it's counterproductive to a dynamic battlefield. So that's the close quarter battle module. That's done. And we have the military logistics done. Next is the Civ objective. So at the Civ objective, you have the ability to choose the TAOR marker, the blacklist marker, which we'll get to shortly, the objective type filter, I can't talk, objective size filter, priority, place units, you want them to place units, the force size, force weighting, readiness, roadblocks, sea patrols, ambient guards, and then this is where you select the type of entities that you want spawned in. So the faction that we're using, the RHS MSV, has infantry, motorized, mechanized. So we're going to have, out of 200, we'll set, say, 180 for infantry. We want 180 infantry to be able to be spawned in a, we're actually going to drop this number down to 100 because we're only going to use one TAOR. Actually, we'll use two, but, so we'll use 80 infantry over the override, and then motorized will do 10, and then mechanized will do 10. And then for the force faction, we're going to copy and paste the RHS faction MSV. For armor and spec ops, we're just going to type in 0 and then hit OK. For mil objective, same concept applies. You have over your force size, so we're going to drop this number because we're only going to have one area of responsibility for the main force for mil objectives. I thought we were gonna, or I had an idea, but I changed my mind. For force weighting, you leave it on random. I usually don't touch the size filters and priority filters, mainly because you want them to be able to be spawned in that entire region. So for 200, we'll put in 150 infantry. Out of the 200, and then for motorized we'll do 25, and then mechanized will do 25, and then for armor we'll hit 0, spec ops will hit 0, and then for force faction we'll hit Control V again and paste in RHS faction MSV. And then down at the bottom, like I said in the first video, you want to create the HQ, you want to create the field HQ. Faction doesn't have air units, you want them to place supplies. You want them to place ambient, or you can choose if you want them to place ambient vehicles or not. And then I leave guards on high. Like I said in the first video, this is new. So if you have it set on low, there won't be a lot of guards. If you have it on medium, it'll be 50-50, and a high, you'll have more entities spawned in to, guard key locations. And then, like I said, with the TAOR and the blacklist, we'll get to that shortly. The military AI skill, this is where you put in your faction up at the top. So if you want them recruit, regular, or veteran, it's up to you. We'll put them at regular, so we'll just control V that right there, and then hit OK. That's all you need to do. So with all of these guys now, what you're going to do is you're going to sync all of these to the military AI commander. That way the military AI commander can set up supply routes with the logistics. All the skill is set. The mil objective, the commander can give him the military objectives, and the commander can give the civilian objectives. And then the close quarter battle, you want him to be able to control that. So for this, we're going to just move him over here really quick and then set up a location. We'll go up to... We'll go over here. We'll set up the military camp right off of the desert airfield over here. So we'll just drag this guy and plop him over here. So how I did that, if you're not aware of how the editor works, you just copy all of them or select all of them, and you can move them all around at the same time. So this is where the military's base is going to be. We'll do the civilian population and the civilian placement in another video. Actually, no, we'll do it right here. So basically with the civilian placement and the civilian population, same concept. You can select the area of responsibility and the blacklist, and then you can also force a faction. So we'll go back over here really quick, and then we'll select, since we're using Russian factions, we'll use the cup Russian faction right here, right? So I just copied that with Control C. I didn't mean to fucking Alt Tab out. And then we're just going to paste that in the force faction. And then with civilian vehicles, it's your prerogative. We'll leave it on low vehicles just so you can see what it does. And then civilian agents, we'll put it on high. That way there's more civilian agents in this location. Then I usually don't touch the objective size and priorities. So from here, go over to civilian population. Select a spawn radius. We'll just leave it at the default 900. Spawn heli radius, we'll drop this down to 500, like the virtual AI system. And spawn planes, we'll set that at 0. Actually, we'll leave the spawn heli radius at 900 because we're not really going to be using helicopters right now. But if you are, it's your prerogative. If you want AI to be able to be spawned in and spotted at range, have the number high. If you want it, the civilians to spawn in, as you get closer, it's your prerogative. Active limiter, we'll leave this at 25 for the time being. The higher you have this number, the more civilians you have, the lower you have. It's pretty self-explanatory. So say, for instance, you're using a war-torn area, and the civilians fled, then set the number down to like 10, and then there'll only be 10 active civilians in a given location. For the time being, we'll leave all of these at 0 or at low. That way, there's no hostility towards Blue for Op or Independent. And then because we're using Russian factions, we'll just select Eastern there, and then we'll hit OK. So with these two, what you're going to do is you're going to sync the two. Doesn't matter how you sync it. You could sync civilian population to placement or placement to civilian population. You're going to select both of them and then move them to your designated area where you want them at. Note with the military objectives or the military modules and the civilian modules, if you're using more than one faction, you can have multiple military modules placed down. You only need one military AI skill though, but like CQB, Commander, Logistics, Civ, and Mil objectives, you can have 2 or 3, however many factions you're using. For civilian though, you you can only really use one. You only need to place one of each down. You don't have to, duplicate it if you're going to be using more than one civilian faction. However, that's your prerogative. So we'll place this guy over here in this area of Paros, and then we'll go to the next step, which is the TAORs. So we'll come back to that here shortly. See you guys in the next video. If you guys are enjoying this tutorial so far, make sure you guys leave a like, comment, subscribe. If you do subscribe, hit that little bell icon. Also, feel free to share this video or playlist. That way, you can help yourself or your buddies out and whatnot. Yeah, hope to see you guys in the next one. Cheers.